The sound of approaching hoofbeats made Meve turn to see Reynard spurring on his panting horse, galloping at a breakneck speed towards her.
Ill tidings I bring, your grace.
Clearly. Glad tidings never arrive with such urgency.
Our scouts captured a Nilfgaardian messenger. He was traveling in disguise, and by night. When he realized his capture was imminent, he strove to destroy the letters he carried. We were able to salvage some, in parts.
Anything of interest?
Yes, there is, I fear. Your Majesty, you must listen. Consider your offer accepted. Direct Meve and her force to the agreed site. We await their arrival. Your reward shall be as agreed. Hail Keritsa.
A traitor. We might have expected as much. Nilfgaard has shown amply that it abides only by the rules it sets. Since they have not proved able to defeat me in the field, in open battle, they seek other means. I suppose the scroll bears no name.
It does not, your grace.
The messenger. Have you questioned him?
Naturally, your grace. Alas, he knows not to whom the letter is directed. He was to leave it in an agreed spot.
I take it tidings of the whole affair have spread throughout the force?
Yes, your Majesty. The witnesses were too many to keep this fact a secret.
We must thus assume the traitor in our ranks knows it as well, and will make no attempt to retrieve the scroll. A dead end. Have we any other leads or clues?
None, I fear, your Majesty. We must be alert. Keep a keen eye on events as they unfold, and exercise great caution in forging new acquaintances.
Very well. Eyes wide open, all senses attuned. Yours in particular, Reynard.
Of course, my lady.
Curse a Blackbrook!
I'd get up. I would, your Majesty, but my arse is frozen to the ground. Four Dwarves Codex states it clear. If you're in a mine and something knocks, you'd do best not to knock back. Four Dwarves Codex, I'd get up. I would, your Majesty, but my arse is frozen to the ground.
Curse a Blackbrook Vale's been undone! And by a human wench! We would take root neath Mount Carbon, where it's warmer, but allotments for the Vale. Curse a Blackbrook Vale's been undone! And by a human wench!
I'd get up.
Riding past a mine, Meve noticed a group of miners gathered around the entrance to a shaft. Frost had settled on their moustaches and beards, suggesting they had been there for some time. The Queen summoned Gabor and asked him to determine the reason for this sit-in. He returned after a few minutes and announced the most curious thing.
They're waiting for the knocking to stop.
Meve's frown prompted Gabor to explain in greater detail.
According to our laws, dwarves can't go into a mine if there's knocking coming from inside. We're obliged to wait for the ruckus to quieten down.
Ah, yes. Our own miners share this superstition.
Reynard interjected.
They say the knocking is that of a treasure unknown, a kind of mine ghost.
With all due respect, your miners are dimwits.
Gabor said, patting Reynard on the shoulder.
Knocking means an imminent and abrupt discharge of the potential pliable energy of rock formations. In other words, ye ken, a rock burst. Except usually it's all done in a day or two, whereas these lads have been waiting going on 2 weeks. Foreman's grown impatient. He'd like to send someone down the shaft, have him see what's at issue, but, well, the code forbids us from doing anything of the sort.
If in this manner I can gain favor among your brethren,
sighed the Queen, dismounting.
so be it. I shall descend and see what the problem is.
The shaft was too narrow to fit an entire army, so Meve and a small unit of men entered the mine, miners' lamps in hand, and hearts in their mouths. The rhythmic knocking coming from the bowels of the mountains, distorted and multiplied, was unnerving. Soon the company arrived at the place that seemed the source of the knocking. Gabor put his ear to the rock and listened for several moments in silence, then struck the wall with all his might. The wall crumbled with a crash, opening a passage into another corridor, from which sprang numerous foes.
Did you hear something? What was that?
My gnome senses are telling me. Those definitely aren't ghosts.
This harvest will be reaping black-clad heads.
Who goes there? Drop your weapons!
Nay, you drop yours!
Can't get our asses moving.
Who just grabbed me?
Oh, apologies, Meve. I thought you were Reynard.
Have it the white of an eye from half a league away.
There's been a mistake. I'm no mage.
When will you ever learn?
Reynard! Are we winning? I can't see a bloody thing!
The unworthy shall be punished.
Greetings. What is it?
Stop! Stop! We surrender!
Both sides were surprised. Both fought in the weak light of torches, nearly down on hands and knees. In the end, the Queen emerged victorious, and as soon as she had returned her sword to its sheath, she asked the new prisoners a question that was on everyone's mind.
Who the devils are you?
The captives looked at each other in disbelief, as if before them stood a ghost. Finally, one of them managed to choke out a response.
Your Highness, we're your subjects.
Meve recognized the accent at once. The men came from Rivian. But what were they doing so far from home? According to the prisoner's account, after the Nilfgaardians' invasion of their kingdom, terrible poverty gripped the land. Seeking bread, some desperate inhabitants had gone to the mountains of Mahakam, engaging in wildcat mining in search of precious ores. Without asking the dwarves what they thought of this,
You know yourself, my queen.
explained one captured Riv.
They guard their treasure real jealous-like, don't care a whit about the suffering of others. They see us starving down in valley, and don't lift a stubby finger.
Sadly, the Rivians had dug close to existing corridors. When Gabor destroyed the wall that stood between them and the dwarves, they were convinced they were being attacked by monsters, so they raised arms in self-defense.
Meve, 'tis a tough nut to ken,
said Gabor.
but let's nae kid ourselves. These men are thieves, and we must hand them over to the Mahakam guard.
So they may do what? Sentence them to hard labor, or hang them at once,
said Reynard, his usual calm shaken and his voice raised.
These are your subjects, Queen. They coveted their neighbor's goods, true, but only because they had naught themselves.
The foreman wished for the knocking to stop,
said the Queen.
and so it shall. As for you, go back to Rivia, and tell all their queen shall soon return, leading an army.
The grateful Rivs quickly packed up their tools and left the mountains. Meve had no doubt Bruverhoog would soon learn of the affair and would certainly not approve of her decision. Yet she preferred to face the Elder's wrath than send her subjects to a dwarven prison, or possibly to their death.
Aye.
Have it the white of an eye from half a league away.
Should have listened to me, old lady.
Thing about slings, they hide well. Eh?
This harvest, we'll be reaping black-clad heads.
Ever have a stone knock out one of your teeth?
My spirit's willing and how, but these damn boots are killing me.
Have it the white of an eye from half a league away.
There's a time to reap, a time to sow, and a time to die.
Bigger they are, easier they are to target.
Aye.
Meve's force neared Davor's abyss. Signs of beastly feasting were not hard to find. Countless paw and claw tracks were impressed in the blood-stained snow. Among the boulders, bones picked clean were strewn about. Gascon lifted one from the ground.
Empty inside,
He said.
Something sucked out the marrow.
Meve's soldiers feigned indifference to the grisly sight. They marched on, their stepped rhythm unwavering, a song on their lips. Yet hearing a slight tremolo in their voices, Meve knew they merely sought to drown out their fear. A moment later, a commander's horn sounded, the signal to halt. The Queen galloped to the fore of the column and found herself at the edge of a vast, round hole in the ground. She could not see the bottom. Meve drew her reins tight to prevent her mount from taking even one step forward.
What is this? A crater? A desiccated lake?
A mine of the strip variety.
Gabor explained.
Treasures we picked and shoveled for here. Diamonds. Till we happened on the beasts, that is.
What now?
Orion's a dam. Holds back a lake. If we can break it, water'll rush in, fill the abyss and the tunnels from which the beasts emerge. Just need to get around the mine first. Way down's on the other side.
Meve squinted and gazed into the distance. Indeed, there was the dam. And at its foot, a swarm of beasts roiled about. Her soldiers gazed at their queen expectantly, their arms at the ready. She knew well they would rush into battle, in spite of their fear.
Gabor!
Meve cried out over the whirling wind.
Have you bards here in Mahakam?
Course, your grace!
Then we shall give them good reason to compose this day, on the themes of courage, of heroism, of Lyria! Gee up!
And with that cry, the queen spurred her mount, grabbed a banner, and raising it high over her head, rushed headlong at the horrid swarm.
Here's the way down. We need to break through and destroy the dam.
My spirit's willing and how, but these damn boots are killing me.
The chase is on! I'm coming.
It's not too late to walk away.
Your Grace, monsters approach from all sides.
If anyone asks, you've not seen me.
Excellent! The dam's about to give!
Ever have a storm knock out one of your teeth?
dwarves flounder!
Excellent work!
And indeed, bards sang of this battle soon after. For no claws or fangs could break through the wall of shields the Lyrians raised that day. And no scales could protect the beasts from the Lyrians' stinging arrows and blades.
Fight! Do not relent! Let us show these beasts! It is they who should fear us!
The Queen shouted. In the end, the beasts turned to flee, yet Meve's force cut off any chance of escape. A solid wall of men began to push the monsters ever closer to the edge of Davor's abyss. Pressed from all sides, the horrors began slipping over the precipice, screeching terribly as they fell. Silence came at last. The Queen stood at the edge of the precipice, breathing heavily, leaning on her sword. From the depths of the mine came muted growls and groans.
Let's flood the damn hole,
Hissed Gabor.
before any other shite crawls out of it.
A rush of icy water suddenly rose, then just as abruptly plunged into the mine, flooding the pit. And where once lay Davor's abyss, now lay Davor's pond. Meve descended back into the pass, exhausted and covered in beastly blood, yet also exceedingly pleased. She was one step closer to dwarven support in the war against Nilfgaard. Once the Lyrians had put some distance between themselves and the now destroyed monster lair, Meve ordered her men to pitch camp. Then she sent the quartermaster off for food and drink. The soldiers lit campfires, then set aside their weapons. Soon after, lively music and song could be heard throughout the camp.
Your Majesty,
Reynard said from behind Meve's back.
a messenger from the Elder-in-Chief.
The Queen turned to see a dwarf in a richly adorned jerkin and a shako with golden seams. She stifled her laugh into a smile and lifted her chin proudly, expecting praise and a pledge of aid in the war against Nilfgaard.
My lady, your daring deeds have come to the Elder's attention.
Said the dwarf in a measured voice.
He's positively irate and demands an explanation.
Irate? But why? I and my men, we've aided you greatly.
Elder Hoog awaits at the Langbridge. You'd be wise not to keep him there any length of time.
And with that, all the Queen's enthusiasm for a celebration was instantly gone. She waited until the fires expired and the songs died down, then gave the order to march.